1960s and the 1970s were a time of peace, love, and music. Although there was much more sinister things going on during this time, quite a few of the sinister events occurring during this time were caused by a cult leader named Charles Manson. Charles Manson wasn't the only person like this, and perhaps by being educated on people such as him, we will be better able to protect ourselves and our families. Although I am not a psychologist, I have done extensive research and written many papers over this topic. Charles Manson was a cult leader in the 1960s who sprung terror into the hearts of millions through his actions and crimes. Today I will be talking to you about Charles Manson's early life, his crimes, and his trial and punishment. First, let's talk about Charles Manson's early life. Charles Manson had anything but a perfect childhood, but did that make him a monster? Manson was born no name Maddox, although he soon began to be called Charles Maddox. His name later changed to when his mother remarried. He was born to a young mother, Kathleen Maddox, a teenage runaway who was only 16 at the time of Manson's birth. Kathleen was a petty criminal, and after running away from home to begin to work in prostitution, she continued to do so until Manson was 4. When Manson was 4, his mother met a man and attempted to rob him, although it was very sloppy and unplanned and resulted in her being arrested. Manson moved to live with his aunt and uncle and cousin in Virginia. Although his aunt and uncle were strict, Manson did manage to get into some trouble. 3 years after Maddox was released from prison and reunited with Manson, the two often moving from state to state, staying in run-down motel rooms. Maddox was jailed once again when Manson was 13 for robbing a gas station. Kathleen was not an amazing mother. Here's a quote from Manson himself depicting his time with her. "Mom was in a cafe one afternoon with me on her lap," Manson later recalled. The waitress, a would-be mother without a child of her own, jokingly told my mom she'd buy me from her. Mom replied, "A pitcher of beer and he's yours." The waitress set up the beer, Mom stuck around long enough to finish it off, and left the place without me. Several days later, my uncle had to search the town for the waitress and take me home. After his mother was no longer in the picture or taking care of him, he quickly fell into a life of crime. Now that we've talked about Manson's early life, we're going to talk about his later life and crimes. In the year 1969, Manson was the cause of crimes that shocked the nation. Manson's first crime, which would be the beginning of many more, occurred in 1948 when he robbed a grocery store. He was later convicted of armed robbery at the age of 13. Manson continued to lead a life full of petty crimes. Manson was sentenced to a 4-year suspended sentence after forging a treasury. Manson was jailed after breaking his probation terms and was released in 1967. In 1967, after being released, Manson moved to California and met a woman named Mary Bruner, who became his first follower. Manson began to recruit women into his cult that was oftentimes known as the Manson family. In 1968, Manson became obsessed with the Beatles' song Helter Skelter and believed it told of a race war between the African Americans and the Caucasians. During the next following months, the Manson family committed petty crimes. They also heavily abused drugs. In 1969, the Manson family killing spree began. Manson had manipulated a man, Bobby, to torture and murder a music teacher named Gary Hinman, the man who introduced him to Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. The words "political piggies" was written on the wall in Hinman's blood. On August 9, 1969, the most infamous of the Manson murders took place. 4 members of the Manson family broke into the home of director Roman Polanski and actress Sharon Tate. Under Manson's instructions, they killed Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, and 4 other people who were on the property. Tate's husband was abroad at the time. The family wrote on the door in Tate's blood in order to attempt to fuel Helter Skelter. Now that we've discussed Manson's early life and crimes, let's discuss his trial and prison time. Manson was arrested later on in 1969 due to car theft charges. Although Manson was arrested in 1969, it is unknown at the time that he had ran the cult that committed the crimes. Manson was not connected to the crimes until one of his followers let slip of the incidents and how it all occurred. Once Manson was connected to the crimes, the trial went into full swing. Manson attempted to say that the crimes were not his idea and that his followers did it on their own. The court managed to catch him by saying that as a gun is to a murderer, his followers were to him. They were his weapons of choice. Manson and 3 of his followers were sentenced to the death penalty, although due to many court appeals, the sentence was postponed until 1972, when the death penalty was abolished in California and the sentence was changed to life in prison. Charles Manson applied for parole 12 times, although he was never granted it. Manson remained in prison until 2017 when he died due to a heart attack. In conclusion, you have learned about Charles Manson and the many crimes he committed. Charles Manson was a cult leader in the 1960s who sprung terror into the hearts of millions. I have told you about Charles Manson's early life, his crimes, and his trials and punishments. There are very scary people everywhere in our past, and possibly even in our everyday lives. The next Charles Manson could be anywhere, possibly in this room. Maybe they're even sitting next to you.